Oh boy, this is going to be a long video. Today I'm going to be ranking every single MCU movie using a tier list, because why not? Deadpool and Wolverine is coming out in a few months and it's sort of bringing back that MCU hype that's been missing for so damn long, so I thought now would be the perfect time to do this. And yeah, I'm going to go through every single movie as fast as I can because there's so many and I don't want this video to be overly long, so let's just get started talking about the first movie that started this huge universe, and that is the first Iron Man. A pretty solid origin story for Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr. is of course the perfect Tony Stark. The effects for 2008 honestly look amazing. The villain was a bit weak, but overall a really solid start for the MCU, and I'm going to put in A. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Up next is The Incredible Hulk, and I'm not going to lie, I really like this movie. I don't love it, it does get a little slow, but I thought Edward Norton was a pretty good Bruce Banner and a really great Hulk, the best looking Hulk that we have gotten so far. I like it. I'm going to put in A bit of an underrated pick, but I like it. I really enjoyed it. Up next is Iron Man 2, and unfortunately it was nowhere near as good as the first movie. The effects still look amazing, and seeing Iron Man and War Machine team up was awesome, but the villain was really weird and really weak and just not as good as the first movie, and I'm just going to put it in B. It was meh. Up next is the first Thor movie, and yeah, it's okay. I mean, Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston were pretty good, but overall, I don't have much to say about it. I'm just gonna put it in B. It was okay. Up next is Captain America: The First Avenger, and I'd say it was enjoyable enough. The first half of the movie with little scrawny Chris Evans was a little distracting, but when he finally turns into Captain America, it does get pretty enjoyable, so I'll just put it in B. It was fun enough. Up next is the first Avengers movie, and hey, say whatever you want about Joss Whedon, but I loved his first Avengers movie. I really fucking enjoyed it. It was one of the first movies that I actually experienced in a theater, so maybe that's why I have an appreciation for it, but I loved it. It was awesome seeing the heroes come together and assemble. It was awesome. I'm putting in an S. I love this movie. Up next is Iron Man 3, and I mostly enjoyed this movie. I think it does get a little weird with the whole twist with the Mandarin in like the middle of the movie. That was just random as fuck, but I really enjoyed Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man once again, and the finale does get pretty crazy, so I'll put it in B. It was mostly good. Up next is Thor: The Dark World, and yeah, I think you know where this is going. This is easily one of the most forgettable and boringest MCU movies to ever be released. The villain was pretty bad, and I just don't remember anything about this movie, so I'm just going to put it in C. Up next is Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and I'm not going to lie, I just thought this movie was fine. I mean, the action scenes for the most part were pretty cool. Captain America was cool, Black Widow was cool, but overall, this movie was just okay, and I don't know, it's not really an MCU movie that I would come back to a lot, so I'm just going to put it in B. I'm very sorry. Up next is the first Guardians of the Galaxy, and I really love this movie. James Gunn, of course, does a really good job at making you love these characters that you probably never even heard of before this movie even came out. So yeah, James Gunn, you nailed it. The characters were great, the story was great, awesome movie, and I'm putting it in an S. Up next is Avengers: Age of Ultron, and obviously it is nowhere near as good as the first movie. Ultron could have been a much better villain, a lot more menacing, but he just wasn't that great. But you love the characters, you can enjoy them enough where you can just call this movie a fine watch, so I'll just put it in B. Up next is the first Ant-Man movie, and you know, Paul Rudd was charming enough, and there were some cool sequences with Ant-Man being all tiny and shit, and that's about all I can give it, so yeah, putting in B. Up next is Captain America: Civil War, and I really like this movie. I think this has definitely got one of the best action scenes of the entire MCU. Like, the entire airport battle was awesome, and it introduced Spider-Man into the universe. There you go, so that's great, so I'll put it in A. It's good. Up next is Doctor Strange, and it's another origin story movie that I'm not too crazy about. I mean, Benedict Cumberbatch was okay, there was some cool visuals, some trippy stuff that we got to see, but the villain was pretty forgettable, and this whole movie's pretty forgettable, so I'm just gonna put it in B. Up next is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and I really enjoyed this movie. I love it. I think it's not as good as the first movie. I think the first movie is slightly better, but this is still a great sequel nonetheless. The characters were great, everyone's great, it's all good, and yeah, I'm putting in S. I love this movie. Up next is Spider-Man: Homecoming, and I like this movie. I don't love it as much as I used to, but I still like it. I think Tom Holland does a really good job in this movie. You know, some of the CGI and all that, it's not great, but I think it's still a good Spider-Man movie. It's not amazing, but it's still pretty solid, so I'm gonna put an A. Up next is Thor: Ragnarok, and not gonna lie, I just think this movie is fine. I know a lot of people really like this movie. I just think it's fine. I think it's maybe a bit overly jokey, and some of the CGI special effects are a bit but it's fun. It's funny at times. It's alright. I'll put it in B. Up next is Black Panther, and it's just another origin story movie that I thought was fine. I'm sorry, I don't know. I keep saying that, but I don't know. I just thought this movie was alright. The CGI does get pretty rough near the end, but Chadwick Boseman, it was alright. It was a good Black Panther. I'll put this movie in B. Up next is Avengers Infinity War, and I still really like this movie. I don't love it, but you know how they were able to balance all of these characters, the Guardians, Avengers, Spider-Man, just all of these characters in one movie was honestly, you gotta give them some credit. It was pretty impressive, and the cliffhanger ending I thought was great. Thanos was a pretty solid villain, a really good movie, not amazing, but I think it was impressive, so I'll put it in A. Up next is Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I don't know why this was the movie they had to release after Infinity War. I just think it's fucking stupid. Yeah, I thought this movie was pretty fucking mid. Yeah, I'm putting it in C. Up next is Captain Marvel, and yeah, man, I'm sorry. It's just, this movie was not for me. I didn't really enjoy it. Brie Larson, I don't know, wasn't that great as Captain Marvel. She wasn't a very interesting character, and yeah, not a great movie. I'm putting in C. Up next is Avengers Endgame, and I like this movie. I don't love it. I think Infinity War is a little bit better. I think the first half of this movie is a bit meh, but then, like I say, the third act, you know, the big finale, I think that's where it gets pretty fucking good and really satisfying, and it's a pretty good movie, but not amazing, so I just put an A. Up next is Spider-Man Far From Home, and I personally really don't like this movie. I'm not a fan. The way they, you know, all the Iron Man references, Mysterio as a villain was a bit meh and was way too connected with Iron Man. The CGI was a bit iffy at times, and didn't love this movie. It was a bit overly jokey, and yeah, my least favorite Spider-Man movie, and I'm putting in C. Up next is Black Widow. Yeah, Black Widow finally has her own movie. Cool, yeah. Yelena was, you know, sort of entertaining at times, you know, cracked a few jokes, but that's really it. That's all I remember. It was a pretty forgettable movie. I'm putting in C. Up next is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and some cool action scenes, but other than that, it does get a little weird, especially with the Mandarin showing up out of nowhere from Iron Man 3. That was kind of weird, and the big finale in this movie gets a little CGI, green screen heavy, and yeah, that was a little distracting, and it's meh. I'm putting in C. Up next is Eternals, and holy shit, the worst MCU movie I've ever seen. What the fuck was this? This was boring, the CGI was terrible, the characters sucked, everything sucked. This was shit. Putting in D, awful. Up next is Spider-Man No Way Home, and personally, I still love this movie. Yes, it has a few issues and some plot holes, but I think it's still great. The way they, you know, bring in the villains and Toby and Andrew to kind of fit them in with Tom Holland's story, I think they do it really well. I love this movie. It has its issues, but I still really enjoy it. I'm putting it S. I love it, man. Up next is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and I liked it for what it was. I enjoyed it. It was alright. I do, you know, mainly because of, you know, Sam Raimi's direction and stuff. That definitely made it a lot more fun, and Scarlet Witch was easily the standout of this movie. Like, no shit, of course. So yeah, I'll put it in B. I enjoyed it. Up next is Thor Love and Thunder, and yeah, I don't know what they were thinking with this movie. It was not great. I don't even know how they were able to get Christian Bale as the fucking villain. Natalie Portman just seems bored throughout the whole movie, and overly jokey, CGI horrible, it's bad. I'm putting in D. Up next is Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and I'm sorry, I don't really like this movie. It was too long, the characters weren't that interesting. Effects wise, I think it was pretty good. Nothing really looked bad, but overall, I would probably never watch this movie again. I'm putting in C. Up next is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, also known as a green screen the movie, because holy shit, that's basically the whole movie. There's just actors standing in front of a green screen, and that's it. And it's bad, and it sucks. The villain sucks. Everything sucks. I'm putting in D. Up next is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and I like it. I think it's a solid finale, but it's a little forgettable. I don't think it's as good as the first two movies, but you watch it, you enjoy it, you'll like it, but you'll kind of forget about it afterwards. That's kind of how I felt about the movie, but it's good. I think you should check it out. It's a good finale to the Guardians, and I like it. I'll put it in A. And last but not least, the Marvels. Holy shit, why does this movie exist? I have no idea. All of the characters, Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, Miss Marvel, all of them were not interesting in the slightest. The little banter they would have together wasn't even funny. The villain sucked and was forgettable, and I don't know what was her deal. That was weird, and yeah, it's pretty bad, and I'm putting in D. But yeah, that's it. This is my tier list of every single MCU movie, and I hope you like it. Hopefully you're not too angry. If if you disagree with some of the things I said about some of the movies, you can let me know in the comment section below about why I'm wrong about this or whatever, or you can let me know. Just please do it in a way that's not rude or hurtful, please. But yeah, that's it. That's my tier list of, every single MCU movie. And yeah, now we just gotta wait for Deadpool and Wolverine, and please be good.